This late summer day in September, we hop on board the ferry Spokane, headed for Kingston on the Kitsap Peninsula. We catch the ferry at the dock in Edmonds, a picturesque city on the shores of Puget Sound. The ferry ride from Edmonds to Kingston is only about 30 minutes, and we're approaching the dock at Kingston before we know it. On the shores of Apple Tree Cove lies Kingston. It was once a wild lumber town in the 1850s. Now it's a quiet ferry terminus that takes visitors from Seattle on a historic trip back into time. We're here with our traveling companions, Iwin and Binlin. Known as the Little City by the Sea, Kingston is the northern gateway to the Olympic Peninsula. Founded in 1853 by Benjamin Bannister, the community was originally known as Apple Tree Cove. By 1880, Kingston was known as a lumber town until the mill closed in the early 1900s. The local lumber yard is still in business today. Kingston's founders dreamed of turning the town into a vacation resort for Seattleites, but these dreams never materialized. Despite this, today Apple Tree Cove is a great place to relax and enjoy nature. Once a thriving sawmill on Gamble Bay in the 1850s, now Port Gamble is a historical town with a lot of character. This pair of 50,000-gallon water tanks distinguish Port Gamble as a real Washington original. The sawmill that Pope and Talbot founded on Gamble Bay in 1853 remained in operation until 1995 and is recognized as one of the longest continually running mills in the U.S. The mill that started Port Gamble may be gone, but the recently restored town that grew up around the mill gives visitors a chance to see how early Washington lumber towns looked and functioned. The main street is lined with historical buildings that remind us of Port Gamble's past. This is one of the oldest surviving Masonic halls in Washington, and it's still used today by the local Masons. It's not known when this fire station was built, but it was moved here sometime between 1929 and 1956. The mill workers volunteered as firefighters. Today, the fire station is home to a kayak dealer. The Port Gamble General Store has actually been rebuilt 5 times since 1853 on this site. Today, the store sells mostly gifts and local crafts of interest to the many tourists from all over the world who visit. Upstairs is a sea and shore museum that shows visitors samples of all the diverse wildlife and artifacts collected from the waters of the bay. To the side and behind the general store is the Port Gamble Historical Museum. Outside the entrance to the museum is a courtyard displaying some important relics from Port Gamble's lumber and maritime past. This impressive specimen of an elm tree was planted in 1875 and grown by a local man who won a state championship for it. The Walker-Ames house is the most elaborate house in town. This Queen Anne-style home was the residence of the mill manager, and its front door faces the bay because that's where important visitors arrive from, off of ships. At the end of the main street is a wonderful viewing platform where you can see Hood Canal, where ships heavy with lumber from the mill headed for distant ports. The community center was designed by Seattle architects and built in 1906. A barber, doctor, dentist, and post office served Port Gamble residents here through the years. Today, it still is home to the local post office. The New York House is probably named after the hometown of the physician who practiced here in 1860 and again in 1878. It served as a hospital, office, and company guest house through the years. St. Paul's Episcopal Church was built in 1879. It was built and maintained by the mill company to encourage its workers to attend. The steeple and original congregational affiliation echoes the New England origins of its founders, Pope and Talbot. little further west of Port Gamble lies the pleasant Salisbury Point Park and boat launch. This beachfront park is a popular fishing spot as well. We stop here to take a rest before traveling across the Hood Canal floating bridge, which we can see in the distance. The Hood Canal floating bridge connects the Olympic and Kitsap Peninsulas together with one of the longest floating spans in the world at 2,398 meters long. It took a decade for the bridge to be built. It was originally opened in 1961, but a severe storm in 1979 caused the bridge to sink. It was rebuilt and reopened in 1982. Founded in 1842 by explorer Charles Wilkes, Port Ludlow was chosen in 1992 as the best residential community for active adults in the U.S. During the 1870s, Port Ludlow was known for its fine shipbuilding, and that reputation caused the town to prosper. Later, in 1879, Pope and Talbot of Port Gamble fame purchased the sawmill and took over the shipbuilding business. Today, Port Ludlow is a resort town with a beautiful marina, golf course, world-class hotel and restaurant, and a water lover's paradise, ideal for boating, fishing, windsurfing, and kayaking. On the site of a former sawmill refuge burner now stands a Native American totem pole in a small park. The totem was erected in 1995 to commemorate Port Ludlow's evolution from its past as a lumber and shipbuilding town to today's residential and tourist community. Port Ludlow's beachfront is a great place to soak up some last summer sun rays and watch the ships sail past.